Welcome, viewers, to the February 2016 episode of Environmental History Worth Reading. I'm Sean Courage, one of the editors here at niche-canada.org, and I'm joined by Jessica.
I'm Jessica DeWitt, and I'm the social media editor for Niche.
We've got a hot new list of picks of the best content in environmental history available on the web, and there's so much we've got to get straight to it, Jessica, with this first pick here from historicalclimatology.com, an article by Dagmar de Groot, professor at Georgetown, about the Earth's climate and the role of the Spanish Empire in changing the Earth's climate.
Yeah, so in this post, Dagmar aims to shake up our conceptions of climate change as an event that's started recently. So he goes back to the 16th century and he discusses the cooling period during that time, known as the Little Ice Age, popularly. And he talks about how this wasn't necessarily natural, as some would argue.
Hmm.
And he goes and he talks about colonialism, specifically Spanish colonialism, and how the upset of indigenous populations in what is now North and South America could have changed the climate. For instance, the drop in population could have led to massive reforestation. And with reforestation, more carbon is being taken out of the atmosphere, which could lead to cooling everywhere. So it's just a really interesting article and very popular one this month, this past month.
Yeah, it's an interesting argument, and I feel like Dagamar's was one among several posts that went up on different news sites and blogs about this question about the Spanish Empire and its influence on
Hmm.
the climate.
Yes.
Now, the second one takes you into Chile Terrain here, a podcast from 99% Invisible about the cut ice business.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever listened to this podcast, and I highly recommend it.
Yes, it's
I
very
think
nice.
I got the idea from Jess Duncan. So in this podcast, they look at the ice trade that originated in New England during the 19th century. So they start with the question of how did they have ice cubes in the Caribbean, and they work backward. And it's kind of an interesting diatribe, and they talk about the tools and technology that was used for the ice trade. They talk about how that led to property disputes, like who owns the water, who owns the land, the ice. And they also talk about the decline of the industry as you move into the 20th century and refrigeration becomes common, and also people start not wanting to put pond water in their beverages. They'd
Hmm.
rather have factory made ice cubes. So it's just a nice little podcast, and I recommend listening to it.
Yeah, this would fit really well in an environmental history course that was looking at the ice trade or looking at energy history too. Just the
Mhm,
image that's used as the cover image for the episode has a horse pulling the
mhm.
cutting tool out on a lake, and it just emphasizes the role of organic energy sources in this pre-mineral energy regime ice world before refrigeration.
Yep.
So the next site you picked here is quite impressive, and I'm going to scroll through here for viewers so they can take a look at this. The Wrong Side of History, 100 Years of Opposition to Our Nation's National Treasures, a polemic about national parks and their opponents.
Yes, this is created by the Center for Western Priorities, and I was just really impressed with it. I thought it was a really great way of using environmental history uh, to support a contemporary argument, to make it relevant, and also to make it accessible because the site gives you a lot of information, but it's also beautiful and interesting. Um, and it was created in because of reactions to President Obama creating three new monuments
Mm-hmm.
in the U.S. recently. And of course, as with anything, any federal land that's preserved in the West, there's outcry from people about the government controlling land, taking land away from them, taking possible revenue away from them. And basically, this group is showing the public that this kind of argument has been made for every national park or monument that's been created in the West, and that the argument just doesn't stand. That their parks are both ecologically and economically viable. So.
Right. So each one follows that structure. Olympic National Park with a quote from an opponent from
Mhm.
the time that the park was designated, some general information about the park itself, and then these great statistics about the local economic impact of national park development,
Mhm.
and then a quote from someone more contemporary,
Yeah.
emphasizing the point of how valued and treasured these places are. And
Mhm.
I would be remiss if I didn't note just how pretty this website is and the incredible display features with the parallax scrolling and stuff.
Mhm.
Really, really nice stuff.
Yep.
So the next is an article from Sarah Ruth Wilson, Rape of the Land, 21st Century Ecofeminism and Environmental Rape Culture.
Yes, I thought this was a good pick for this month is National Women's Month, and ecofeminism isn't something that I've seen discussed recently on the internet, so it was nice to see an essay about it. So she looks at the rape of the land concept that emerged in the 1980s amongst ecofeminists, which compared the rape of the land to the rape of female bodies. And then she goes to ask, how does this concept from the 1980s relate to the rape culture debates that are taking place now?
Mm-hmm.
And is it still relevant? Um, and she argues that because at least in the United States, ecological rape culture does exist because people are continuously questioning whether environmental issues are real, whether they're viable, whether people are telling the truth, whether it's climate change or
Mm-hmm.
other issues. She compares this to rape culture, where we're continuously questioning the woman's trustworthiness or whether she is telling the truth. So I just thought it was a really interesting thought piece. And she concludes by saying that ecofeminism of the 1980s doesn't necessarily relate particularly well to this ecological rape culture, but that we can tweak it to make it more relevant. So I just thought it was a good essay.
Yeah, this is a hyper relevant essay that Sarah's posted up here, and she's points to this great parallel, fascinating parallel, I should say, about that demand for evidence, whether we're
Mhm.
thinking about climate change or fracking. There's always a demand on nature or environmentalists to demonstrate damage and evidence
Yes.
of damage. The final pick for this month comes from a website called hyperallergic.com. 40,000 canisters of aerial film from World War II land online, a collaboration, a digital history collaboration project here.
Yeah, so I just thought this was a great thing to look at, firstly, and also a potentially great resource for environmental historians and other historians. So these reels of film are from the National Archives and Records Administration
Mm-hmm.
and the National Collection of Aerial Photography, and they're all freely available to anyone who wants to look at them, and they're very interesting, and I think potentially useful for digital projects, particularly historical GIS, and for use as an imagery in dissertations or books. So it's just mainly a visual resource, so not much to say about it, but I think it's worth checking out.
Well, it's another great list of picks, and hopefully viewers will take a look at those five and take a look at more by following the Niche Canada Twitter account and our other social media accounts on Facebook and Google Plus. And Jessica will keep an eye out for another month to see what she finds out there on the web. Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks, Sean.